I'm Matthew. This is Practice Squadron, and thank you guys for listening on all the podcasts. This is available on every podcast platform, I believe, as well as YouTube. That's where I'm putting it out. So if you're listening to it, go check out my channel, Practice Squadron. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe to the podcast. I believe it's on Spotify, iTunes, or Apple Podcasts, whatever. It's on all those. It's on all those. So pretty cool. As you could tell by the title, I wanted to talk about something controversial today, or controversial to some maybe just due to the severity of it. And I want to talk about Dak Prescott and the Dallas Cowboys. All right, first off, I want to open it up by saying, you know, it sucks what happened to Dak Prescott, getting injured and things like that. I'm not a Cowboys fan, but I do have a few fans that are Eagles fans, and as the Eagles recently did beat the Patriots in the Super Bowl, it brings me joy when the Eagles lose, and the best way to inflict pain on an Eagles fan is to have the Cowboys win. And, ever since, I think there was some debate, definitely in my inner circles on whether or not Dak Prescott has been better than Carson Wentz. In my opinion, he has been. I believe Dak Prescott turned around the Cowboys because they were god awful right before he came in. And even though the Cowboys really have not been good this year, there's a lot of things to blame. I don't really want to get into that. I just want to talk about Dak Prescott and, more importantly, his contract and the Cowboys. So this is what the controversial part of it, and I'm hoping to bring some stuff in that can help you with, that can relate, $1 million sports player to, the average person, right? And I think that's where I kind of come down to it. Somebody who has their own YouTube channel, who does entrepreneurship outside of this, who works a full-time job and things like that. Part of me always sides with the owners, in fact. And I know a lot of sports publications, like the media, will be like, "Oh, I can't believe the fans are siding with the $1 billion owners and not the players." And I think the reason for that mostly is, I think it's easier to picture ourselves as a business owner, someone who can work up to the top, rather than someone being super good athlete, if that makes sense. So I want to talk about Dak Prescott's contract, and there's been a lot of, if you've listened to the media lately, you'll hear that them telling the Cowboys have to pay Dak Prescott next year. They have to pay him this money. They dedicated their Dak Prescott dedicated his career, his pro football career, to the Cowboys, brought them from nothing. They have to pay him. And yeah, I do see that portion. I do think that Dak Prescott definitely played better in his rookie deal than he was getting paid. I believe that, he did elevate the Cowboys, and for sure, 100%, he got paid more on endorsements than he did on his contract itself. So that's something for that. People can be mad at the Cowboys for underpaying him. They should have paid him as much as he wanted and things like that. And I get that. I do get that from a fan and a Cowboys standpoint, but I also see it as a business standpoint. And I hope this. I mean, I really don't care if it offends people, but I am a pro owner, fan, and a part of me believes that and we see this all the time with different sports. Tom Brady leaves the Patriots. I do think a lot of fans went with Tom Brady to Tampa Bay, and I do know a lot of Patriots fans that will watch Tampa Bay now, but the Patriots is still there. When your favorite player leaves or whatever, your team is still there, and that's something that you can, look at and, gravitate towards, right? So that's why I think another thing is, people will say that, if there weren't stars in this league, no one would watch. I mean, that's not true. I mean, people watch college football all the time, and you know, not every player on a college football team is stars. It's about like the alma mater, it's about the name, it's about the team, things like that. And I think that that's where like the mainstream media kind of disconnects for me, because I do believe, even if star players left, someone else would rise up above that. And the business part of me believes, and this happens a lot in the NBA, like the players have more power, than ever before. They have certainly more power than the NFL. But I'm like, if this job is so much and you want to leave, we'll find new players to play and things like that. So that's kind of just like the opening of this. I want to get into Dak Prescott's contract and the controversial part of this. I do not think that the Cowboys should pay Dak Prescott, nor do I think that is the Cowboys' responsibility to make sure that Dak Prescott is financially stable. And here's my thing. We talk about like all these sports players and athletes, they work their whole lives to get to, the NFL, the NBA, MLB, soccer, what have you. And they dedicate their whole life for a chance, And meanwhile, that system, they know the system going in, right? So a lot of people are complaining about, and I mean players, college athletes need to get paid. Well, you're trying to get to the NFL, that this is the system, and you're willfully going in and you're just like complaining the whole time, like I know they're like, oh, a degree isn't worth it, but I mean, I paid for my degree, so there's that. But so you do that, and then you're a player like Dak Prescott, who isn't a first round pick. He's not a second round pick. I believe it was a fourth round pick. Those dudes aren't getting paid millions off the gate. They're getting paid like, I mean, close to $1 million, but under $1 million. So you can look at that and be like, oh, he was drafted there. He really did perform over his like projection, and that the Cowboys should pay him accordingly. Well, it's like you went into the draft knowing kind of where you were going to get picked, and even if you didn't, you worked your whole life for this. What type of money it is. Even if you overperform on the first contract, that is what the league says they're going to pay you. So I don't really understand why people are complaining. You knew going into it, you worked your whole life going into this, you knew that was the amount of money that you were going to make. And I don't think that the league or the Cowboys should be forced to pay more than that just because, you did your job better. I mean, I don't know. It's just when you sign those types of deals, like the contracts, I believe that your word should go into that contract. If I sign a 4-year, $100 million deal, I believe it's the Cowboys' responsibility to pay that, and I think it's my responsibility to hold up my end of, playing for that team. So there's that. Now let's talk about this off season. There's been a lot of, type of going back and forth with Dak Prescott and the Cowboys, and basically, on his contract talks. So what it basically got down to, it was the Cowboys wanted Dak Prescott for 5 years. Dak Prescott only wanted to sign for 4 years because, at that 5-year mark, that the end of the 4 year, there's going to be new collective bargaining agreement. And when that happens, you can make more money. So he wanted to get paid a big chunk now, and then he wanted to get a big chunk later. Well, with that, not signing the 5-year deal with the Cowboys, they franchise tag him, and then they'll hopefully sign him next year if his production is good. Well, here's the thing: if you're Dak Prescott, right? You know what kind of game that you're playing. You see people get injured all the time. To hold out for one year, super risky. I know he got hurt, but I'm thinking like before that, when somebody offers you that amount of money, it's so, I can't even think about like that amount of money just like as somebody who works like a full-time job, but to hold out for even more, knowing that there is risk, it's kind of, it's hard for me to feel bad, honestly. Like I think there's some type of greed to it, or like maybe the fact that he was underpaid and he just thought that the Cowboys should just pay him whatever he wanted. But honestly, it's hard for me to feel bad when the Cowboys offered him that amount of money, and maybe it's not what he was worth or what have you or whatever. Guaranteed cash to play a game that is super dangerous. And for you to hold out and wait so you could get more money, and then you get injured on a one-year deal, and then, for everybody to feel bad for you, it kind of makes me not, honestly. And I'm not even talking about Dak Prescott's character or anything like that, because I do like Dak Prescott as a player. I'm just talking from a business standpoint. I don't think it's the Cowboys' responsibility to take care of Dak Prescott. Do I think that he should still be on the team next year? Yes. Do I think he needs to make $30 million to be injured for 1 year? No. And here's the thing too, is like, if you're a Cowboys fan, I do think you need to stand by Dak, but it's also like, you need to understand the realism and the business part of it, because it's like, can you really afford to pay a quarterback $30 million if he's not playing? I mean, that's kind of awful, honestly. It's not very good. And that's what I'm saying. I know people talk about that it's a business all the time, but it really is, and there's only certain amount that you can pay for all the players on your team. It's only certain number of roster spots. And when you work your whole life to get to that point where, the Cowboys are like, all right, we're going to pay you, I think it was like 150 or plus, 150 plus million or something for 5 years. It's like, how do you turn that down? Like, honestly, you worked your whole life, and granted, I heard that he's gotten like $50-ish million from endorsements of just being the Cowboys quarterback in the past, but it's like, that's hard. I mean, he got paid like 30 plus million this year, so think about it, like the 50 million of endorsements that he had, plus like the 30 million franchise tag this year. I don't think we can really be like, Dak Prescott needs the money. Like, you know what I mean? Like, does Dak Prescott really need the money? And a part of me is like, did he? You turn down like a 5-year deal knowing that there's risk. Do you need that money? Don't come to me later when you knew what you were getting into. You knew the risk when you didn't sign the deal. And, it is what it is. And granted, I think that this might trickle down to future deals, basically when it comes down to, a team paying a player. I think a lot of players are going to look at this situation of like, yeah, I've been balling for 4 years. I've been healthy. I do want more money, but you know what? A freak incident could happen if I'm on a 1-year deal, and it could end my career. And at that point, it's like, are you okay taking, $10 million 1-year deal, or do you want, I don't know, a $50 million 5-year deal? Things like that. I don't know. It's just that's my thoughts on it. I just think when you get offered that amount of money, and you may think that you're worth more, just take it. And I think about that when it comes to like normal people. So if you're still listening, here's where I try to like come back down to the normal people. I think a lot of times, and I've definitely worked jobs in the past, not the job that I'm currently at, but definitely in the past, I go to work and I'm like, man, I hate this job. Like, they're not paying me enough. I don't need to be here, and things like that. But then I look at my bank account and I'm like, I kind of do need to be here. Like, we don't, like I feel like normal people, don't have that luxury of, you know, I do think that you do need to find your worth, but also like finding your worth goes both ways. And it shows how expendable people are just in general of like you work a job, you hate your job, you're like, "Oh, I can do so much better." But then you quit and you're not getting that income anymore and you're trying to find that better job and it's not clicking and then you look back at your old job and they replaced you real quick. It's like, maybe I wasn't worth that much and maybe I should have still been working there. And that's just like my thoughts on it. Try to bring it down is like when you have something good and it's guaranteed, it's I know people try to look for the future and I try to look for the future too, but you can't if you have something guaranteed now, you need to move into something guaranteed in the future. I do think risk is good in some situations, but also stability is also key. And right now, like Dak Prescott doesn't have guarantee or stability, And same thing with like regular Americans. You show up to work, you get paid for the work. Maybe you think that you need to be getting more, but you need to make sure that you got another job on the other side of that. Because if you quit and things don't go your way and maybe you're good for a month not working. And month 2, you're like, oh, like, how come I'm not making this money? And then week 3, and it can happen like that. And I just think that, maybe, and I know pro sport athletes are like millionaires and things like that, or most of them are. But, it's hard for me to feel bad. And I don't think that it's the Cowboys' responsibility to take care of him, just like my work. I could go demand to my work today to, I need a raise or whatever, but if at the end of the day, if they can't do it, it's not really, their problem. And I do see that from like an entrepreneur standpoint of like, I not that I think that that's right or wrong, but that's just how things are, At that point, if they can't do it, it's my job, my responsibility to either find a new job or, reevaluate, maybe it's not so bad working or like doing this current thing. But, if I quit or, if my job's like, let's just say I make $20 an hour and then I want to make 30 and my job is like, no, we can't do that. And then I quit or, I'm like, okay, I'll continue to work, but I also find a new job and then, the new job says they're going to hire me, but they don't. And I quit, is it that it's not that job's responsibility, my previous job, to look out for me. We're all adults. I mean, people could be watching this and they're not adults, but that's just like the real world thing. I do think companies need to look out for their employees, but also, it's not their job to manage their finances or, make sure everything is okay. At the end of the day, it's a job. You go to work, you work the job, and then your finances are your finances. I mean, it's the same thing. If I blow all my paycheck, it's not my job's responsibility to like reimburse me or anything like that. I mean, granted, he's getting paid $30 million this year, 30 plus. And they're probably going to franchise tag him next year, and they're probably going to pay him. But if he is not ready to go after that year, and I can honestly see he's going to get probably the franchise tag this year. I'd be kind of surprised if they didn't, maybe, but they're going to franchise tag him this year, and the following year, because he's not going to play this year, and I guarantee he's not going to be able to play the beginning of next season. So, say next season goes by, they're not going to franchise tag him a third time. They're just not going to do that. So he's going to get he's probably going to get another 1-year deal, honestly, but it's not going to be 30. It's probably going to be like 10 to 15 million, if that. And, it makes you look back and you're like, maybe I should have just taken that that 5-year deal. I mean, that's just my thoughts on it. I know, kind of controversial. I try to bring it back down to earth, in my future podcast or whatever. Just know that while I do love players, I think I love my teams more. And as like the entrepreneur in me, I do tend to side with the owners because I don't know. I think that's more realistic for me to think of myself as, in the future, not like a sports owner, but like, an owner of a business or like a company and things like that. And it's hard for me to think of myself as like a pro athlete. So that's just my take. Thank you guys for watching on YouTube. If you're listening to this on any of the podcasts, thank you for listening. I'm gonna try to do like, this kind of went kind of longer. I only wanted it to be like 10-15 minutes, but in the future, I'm trying to do it every day. So definitely leave a comment, a review on, Apple Podcasts. You can leave a review. Talk to me down in the comments. I'm on Twitter, Instagram, PracticeSquadron. That's all you have to type in. I'm on Patreon as well. If you want to subscribe to the Patreon, that would be awesome. That does cost money. YouTube, if you subscribe, it's free. Hit that like button. And yeah, hit me up in the comments, and definitely would like to have some discussions on Twitter. Maybe you guys can help me with some topics in the future. I think I know what I want to do tomorrow because it revolves around my fantasy team. But just my thoughts on Dak Prescott today. Let me know if, I don't know, maybe I'm 100% wrong. Maybe I'm 50% wrong. Maybe I'm right, I don't know. Just something different, because I know like ESPN, or I don't even know if I can say their name, if any of these other different media, sports, would even talk about this. Well, P.S. Man, I wish I had a 5-year deal, $150 million from the NFL. That would be awesome. That would be awesome.